Hello, my name is Grant Dunning, and this is my informative speech over forensic science. Forensic science, as many of you might know, is a scientific study employed by our criminal justice system. Uh, but I want you to forget what you may or may not know about it because there are many surrounding misconceptions about this study. The field study is in which professionals use scientific means to analyze physical crime evidence, and that evidence is later presented into court to either uh, determine the innocence or the guilt of a specific suspect. So while the DNA evidence to prosecute or exonerate people is a recent milestone in terms of technological advancements, there are certain aspects that a majority of people do not understand about it. So, I personally do not have any professional experience in the career of forensic science, but it's pursuing a career is something that I'm very passionate about, and I've been passionate about it since my grandfather would explain his time in the field of forensic science. I've invested myself into pursuing a career for many years now, and through my time of pursuing, I've written multiple research papers over the topic, and I believe this information to be relevant and important to the audience because having at least some knowledge or at least some clarification on the aspects of forensics that tend to draw out misconceptions of the overall study, it's important to know how it works and how it works in our court systems. So during this speech, I will be stating information regarding the origin and evolution of DNA evidence, the most common uses, and the misconceptions that shroud it. So let's begin with a little history of forensic science. According to the National Institute of Justice in 2012, of their article DNA Evidence Basics, the field of forensic science has come a very long way since its recorded beginnings all the way back in the 700s, where the ancient Chinese would use fingerprint identification to identify documents and clay sculptures. Since then, there have been many, many different instances of progress in the field of forensic science throughout the 18 and 1900s, such as the first use of toxicology to detect arsenic in a criminal jury trial. Forensic science was significantly applied in 1988 when doctors in London uh, were allowed to examine the murder victims of Jack the Ripper in order to try and find some wound patterns. In the 1900s, there were many advancements seen, such as the study of voice print identification and the invention of the breathalyzer for field sobriety tests. But among those, the most important breakthrough came in 1985 when Alec Jeffreys, a genetics researcher at the University of Leicester in the United Kingdom, along with Peter Gill and David Werrett of the Forensic Science Service, they were credited with the development of DNA profiling and genetic fingerprinting. Now, DNA profiling is the process of determining an individual's DNA characteristics, while genetic fingerprinting is using those variations in the genetic code to identify individuals. Now, the development of these methods would set in motion a call for certification, accreditation, standardization, and quality control guidelines for both DNA laboratories and overall the general forensic community. So, how exactly did these methods advance forensic science further? Um, in an article titled Forensic Science History, written by the New York State Police Crime Laboratory, in 1987, Colin Pitchfork of the United Kingdom was the first person to be arrested and convicted of a murder as a result of mass DNA screening. So, with DNA profiling and fingerprinting, Jeffreys was able to match a semen sample gathered from a victim to a person that had type A blood, as well as a very rare and specific enzyme profile that matched only a very small percentage of males in the area of the victim. Pitchfork was one of the males that fit this DNA profile, and he was later brought in for questioning, where he later confessed to the crime. So Jeffrey's methods have proved very useful in the sense of criminal justice, but they've also proved useful in resolving paternity, and even immigration issues. These methods can also be applied to non-human species, as wildlife population genetics studies have made leaps and bounds thanks to Jeffrey's efforts. So aside from using DNA evidence effectively to prosecute criminals in court, as I've stated, it's a relatively new technological breakthrough in our modern society. And because it's relatively new, there are many people who are unaware of the realities of the study and its limitations that it has. It can be very expensive and time consuming, and it doesn't always give infallible results. So, since forensic science has gained so much popularity in society in the last 20 years alone, uh, due to something that Kathy Bonello at the New York Post calls the CSI effect, in which the TV show CSI is about a group of forensic investigators at the Las Vegas Crime Lab. So, for 15 years and 15 seasons, the writers and cast have captivated such a large and devoted viewing fan base. But the problem is that CSI made the science too cool. It often featured technology that was on the cutting edge of forensic science, innovations unavailable to the average police department, and even methods that are still in theory and untested. So even when they did do things correctly, the show is unrealistic about how many resources actually go into investigating a crime. So in this speech, I've explained the origin of evolution of forensic science, some of its applicable uses and misconceptions surrounding it. And I hope this information has given you a better insight to the history of forensic science and maybe be able to see it in a more realistic light than through the TV screen. Thank you.